I need to like cleavage it out with you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Pasha Marlowe here from Let Pleasure Be the Measure podcast. And I know I've probably said it already on previous podcasts. I'm so excited for this next guest, but for real, if there were to be one person beyond Oprah and Brene Brown and Glennon Doyle and they just can't compare to the person I'm about to introduce, Megan Jo Wilson, CEO of Megan Jo Wilson's Rockstar Camp, my coach, the author of Who the Fuck Are You to Be a Rock Star and Who the Fuck Are You to Be a Coach, and a new book coming out. I'll let you announce that.
Sure.
A goddess.
Oh,
my inspiration. Like a year and a half ago, what was it now? I don't know. October 2019 was when I did Rockstar Camp. So that's when I first met you. So it's approximately a year and a half. So yes, I'm a new person and a better person and a much more lively and fun and happy person because of you. And I'm just here to selfishly thank you publicly. But I'm so glad you're here with me today, Megan Jo Wilson. Welcome.
I'm so excited to be with you.
Thank you.
I love you. I miss you. I just bought your new book.
That's crazy for you to say.
So exciting.
You know when you posted that Marianne Williamson reviewed your book? Like that's how it feels for me to hear you say, I just bought your book. That's what it feels like.
Thank you for honoring me and comparing me to such rock star women. I'm just taking that in.
Well, it's the impact you've had on my life. And so I'll just set the scene real quick because I'm sure people are confused, because people who know me now do not believe and cannot imagine that a year and a half ago I would have defined myself as sad, shy, timid, traditional, blocked, stuck. I don't know. I could just go on and on. Not happy and really stuck in my past trauma and stuck in my grief to the extent that I wanted to take my life because my son was that sick and he wanted to take his life. And I was just so like, I was like in like death mode. So my friend Libby, and I went purse shopping. Well, she went purse shopping for a fabulous purse. And I watched her buy a fabulous purse and she was wearing shorts. And I hadn't worn shorts in, I don't know, years because I had body shame. And we had this fantastic conversation about body shame. And I'm like, how did you do that? Like, how do you get to the point where you're wearing shorts and you're celebrating your body and you're buying expensive, overpriced purses just for fun? Like, how do you do that? Just tell me your secrets. And she's like, well, I signed up for Megan Jo's Rockstar Camp. And I'm like, what? So we had this conversation in a parking lot in Yarmouth a couple years ago. And I looked you up and I said, I'm not fucking working with her because she's cool and she's got cool hair and cool clothes and she's a rock star and I don't understand music or singing and I'm not worthy. I'm not cool enough. I just went down the rabbit hole. And then I had a sense, thank God, to call and sign up for a discovery call. And I remember exactly where I was the first time we talked. I know I'm talking so much and I'm hardly letting you get a word in. I promise I will soon. But I'm at this lake house doing personal training for this 80-year-old woman in New Hampshire. And I'm at her lake house and I had to use her phone and her Wi-Fi because it was at the end of my appointment there. And we get on the phone and you're not scary and you're approachable and you're friendly. And I felt safe. And you said something along the lines of, what do you do for fun? And I was like, what do I do for fun? What are you talking about? I have a job and 3 kids. And I'm like, I'm calling you from work. It's just about work. I don't really know. I don't know. I don't have fun. And then you said, what's in your pleasure? What do you desire? Like, oh, come on. And then finally, about half an hour later, I said something really crazy
Mm.
that I can't believe I said even out loud a couple years ago. And I said, okay. If everything were just crazy and I had all the money in the world and all my kids were off out of college and I figured out my life and my body and everything, I would have a girlfriend on the side. And you're like, yeah, that could happen. And oh, I know somebody you should talk to who actually has that life. And I'm like, what? And then you're like, you should come to Rockstar Camp and then you can hang out with me and my other sister goddesses, including this woman who actually has that life. And by the way, this is, I promise the end. You said your life will not, things do not have to fall apart when you claim that desire. And I was like, oh. Anyhow, from that point on, everything changed. I still don't have a girlfriend though, because fuck. Minute. I didn't, but I wrote a damn book about it and I put it out there and claimed it. I signed up for Rockstar Camp and I'll talk about that more because I should probably let my guests talk.
No, keep going. I love it. Love it.
So I signed up for Rockstar Camp, which isn't, by the way, just about singing, even though I thought it was. And I was really pissed off at Mega Joe somewhere around the last week when I was like, okay, when's the part where you teach us how to sing our song?
Mhm. I get that a lot.
Like, yeah, that's not the program. That's not what I do. That's not, it's not about the song. Then what am I doing? And then I stood on stage and I sang the damn song. And there's a whole lot, obviously, that happened before I got to that point. But while I was singing the song, one, I realized, oh, this is what she was saying. This is the fun. This is the pleasure. This is the desire. I think, and I said that the next day, that was the most fun I've ever had in my life. Those 2 minutes on stage. I'm not lying. That is the most fun I ever had in my life. And it allowed me to realize that I hadn't stopped to have fun, that I hadn't realized what it was that brought me to my pleasure, that I had never stepped into my power, that I'd never allowed myself to be seen and heard. And it changed everything. Everything. And that night, while I was crying in the green room, while everyone else was dancing downstairs, because I was like, I don't even know what's happening to me. I said, I think I need to create a comedy program where people can do what I just did and tell their story on a live comedy stage. Because now that I've done something really scary, I need to do something scarier to step into my power even more and to be seen even more and to play big even more. And so I don't know what you did, woman, but seriously, I'm like a different person and I like myself a lot more. And so does everybody else who knows me, except for my parents who think I'm completely lost.
Well, that can happen.
I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for telling that story. It's such a treat to hear the journey from the beginning because, of course, I remember that conversation. And of course, I knew your name because you're kind of like the mayor of cool women's city. Like, you just know you're like a natural connector person. So I remember that conversation so well. I don't remember all those questions and responses I had, but those are pretty damn good. You can have what you desire, right? What a radical thing to hear.
And that everything won't fall apart if you claim it.
And you won't, and your life won't fall apart if you claim it.
Yeah.
What a concept. Of course, sometimes it does, but it doesn't.
But it's such a great question. And I remember right before you went to India, you put out a post that said something along the lines of, if everyone in your world that you love wouldn't, if you knew everyone in the world that you love wouldn't get hurt,
Right.
what would you do?
Right.
And that struck a chord as well. That allowed me to do the podcast and write the book because I was like, well, if I wasn't scared of what everyone would think, say, do, once I stepped into that truth, that was my next step. So yeah, I had to, and well, there's so many directions we can go. But,
I know.
But holding the space for me to surrender to the idea of potentially losing Jamie, and knowing and being able, like you held space for this in the healing circle that you did with the sound healing,
Mm.
that I imagined, could I survive without him? And then coming to the place of feeling whole, that I wasn't only his mom, and that it would wreck me for probably decades, but that it's possible I could survive it.
Mm.
Seriously. It was like it's in the sound healing circle you led. You have so many gifts.
Mm.
All the spaces you've held for such transformation.
Mm.
I felt like when the women were singing around me that I was attending my own funeral and my son's funeral in that
That's
moment.
right.
Yeah. I was walking through that, and then finding a way out of it, and finding a way to not just survive,
Yeah.
but thrive after it. Yeah.
Right. So it's like you were able to face your deepest fear. I mean, that's definitely my deepest fear as a mom.
Mm.
And to be with it for a moment.
Mhm.
And I think the only way we can do that is in community and sisterhood, right? It's like I'm definitely not doing this unless I have a lot of people holding my ropes, because
Mhm.
I will go down, I will just go under. I just will, just the
Mhm.
thought of it,
Exactly.
I will go under.
Yes. Yes.
So I
Yes.
remember that moment. I remember that moment too. And the thread that I'm kind of like seeing through all of it is, for you, for all of us, is like being uh witnessed, having community, and almost like, and this that whole idea of what would I do if no one got hurt?
Yeah.
Because that is what most of us, I think that's what all of us really, especially women, are just, that's our top priority. I'm not going to hurt anyone, I'm not going to offend anyone, I'm not going to
Mhm.
upset anyone, I'm not going to rattle anyone's cage. And then we're suddenly in a cage ourselves, like
Yeah.
all those things you said, sad, numb,
Right.
not having what we want,
Right.
but everyone else is good, so I'm doing my job. It's wild. So that question has been a huge one for me. I got that question from a therapist
Mhm.
when I was sitting with a boyfriend who I kept trying to break up with,
Mm.
but he wouldn't like believe me. So I had to bring him to the therapist's office so that he would hear that I really meant it. And she asked that in front of him, like, I was like, I just don't want him to be hurt.
Yeah.
I will stab myself a million times before I scratch him. Even
Mhm.
though I'm not in love with him anymore, I
Mhm.
definitely want out.
Mhm.
I will torture myself.
Mhm.
Uh, and she said, "Well, what if nobody got hurt? What would you do?" And I was like, "End it immediately."
Yes, and you were certain. Yes.
And he was like, "Oh shit, she
Yeah.
really means this."
Yeah, it's such a powerful question.
Mm.
And the amazing, surprising things that come up when you ask yourself that question, sometimes they feel really radical and sometimes reckless. And it actually seems that a lot of people in your presence, I must say, come out with something like, well, I would have a girlfriend on the side, or I would have
Mhm.
a non-monogamous relationship. My husband would be fine with it. So
Yeah.
one has to wonder, because I've talked to many women, Mega Joe, who said, well, yeah, I mean, Megan Joe could make you bisexual just being in her presence.
Ooh.
Like people step into their sexual desire when they're with you. I'll just say
Yeah.
that.
Yes, I have that effect on people. Well, we're given such a limited menu of options. And it seems so normal until you start to explore the other options, which is what
Mhm.
you've been doing and what I've been doing.
Mhm.
And what I love about exploring all this stuff with the people we work with, right? It's
Mhm.
like, okay, so the options I'm given are monogamous, hetero, missionary position, and the point is to orgasm.
Mm.
Like, and those are all cool options, but
Mhm.
it's like one tiny sliver of
Mhm.
a million
Mhm.
other options.
Mhm. Yes. And that leads me into the whole idea of let pleasure be the measure and pleasure
Yeah.
practices and Mama Gina and her influence on you. And I never had the opportunity to work with her, but I've read her books thanks to you. And I've been following her. And the idea that pleasure goes so far beyond sex and sexuality and orgasm, and to establish a pleasure practice in our life on a daily basis, even when things are really shitty and difficult, is so important. And that it doesn't have to be grand or time consuming or cost a lot of money.
That's
And
right.
that was freeing. So you taught me that as well.
Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah. Shout out to
mhm,
Regina Thomas Shower, Mama Gina. She obviously a hugely influential teacher in
mhm.
my work. And I think that the idea of let pleasure be the measure, like what a great frame. And what's so fascinating to me is it's so simple
Mhm,
and it's so difficult
mhm.
when you are in a space of depressed, sad, anxious, overwhelmed. It's like so counter to what you think is going to help.
Yeah. Right.
At least.
Right.
And I've been doing this for years and teaching it. And still it's like, okay, what how can I infuse a little bit of pleasure into my day right now? Like you said, like, yes, I would love to move to Italy for a month, but
Yes.
given that I can't, could I make an espresso that tastes really good?
Mhm,
Could I have a little dance break in my kitchen? Could
mhm.
I, like today, I'm wearing my Viva Mexico head wrap because I'm really missing Mexico. Like, oh, that
Yeah.
pleases me.
Yes.
And her whole philosophy, which I know is, and I love how you're playing with this in your own unique way, but is that pleasure is the fuel for women. It is the fuel. It is what puts the wind in our sails for our desires. And
Mhm,
without it, we just atrophy. Like all of it just shuts down.
mhm, mhm.
And this is not new wisdom. In fact, it's ancient wisdom that so many of us are just rediscovering and saying, uh, oh, this is ancient,
Yes.
and we're bringing it back into modern times, just like that sound healing
Yes.
experience you had. That's ancient
Yes.
practice. We just
Yes.
happen to be doing it in 2020, wasn't it, last spring, in a house, near the
Oh,
beach.
that's right. It was just before COVID,
Right.
in the lockdown. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes. And it's interesting that you mentioned ancient practices because a lot of what's coming up in these podcasts are ancient practices such as vaginal steaming and yoni steaming and
Right.
things that seem really radical right now and
Right.
doing them for thousands and thousands of years. So
Hmm.
just stepping back into that and then just the tiny I in your honor usually don't wear anything like a bra. And this is as much cleavage as I should since Rockstar Camp. Nobody has seen my boobs. Okay. That was
Yeah.
I still have so long to go, which is where I was going because you mentioned the dance break. I swear I would rather talk about suicide
Yeah.
than do a dance break.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to figure this out because I understand the reasoning behind it and the impact of it. And when I do it, I feel, oh, it's really heavy and very challenging
Yeah.
and feels traumatic.
Yep.
It feels like triggering
Yep.
trauma. Um, and it pisses me off
Yeah.
because it looks like one of the easy preliminary steps. But no, I could write a book and do a podcast and come out as bisexual and be big and play full out in my life and try to become a comedian, do all the big scary things. But get me to dance, even alone,
Yeah.
really hard. Have I ever danced in front of my right now, currently partner? No. Like
No.
there's still so much armor
Yeah.
and I frankly don't get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, it's not uncommon. And there's a couple things. And the obvious one that is, when our bodies hold trauma, we very brilliantly disconnect from our body. My body has trauma. If I connect to my body in a way that feels pleasurable or sensual, it's immediately conflated with really painful, confusing experiences I've had around being in my body as an erotic creature.
Mm,
And so, of course, we don't want to go there because it's triggering to the trauma.
mm,
But the other piece too that I've been noticing more and more is that some women really love to dance. It's like
mm,
just a familiar language and it sort of feels good. And for other women, that's just not their favorite. It's not pleasurable. It actually doesn't bring pleasure into the body. So we've been playing around with like uh if it's not dance, then try jumping jacks or push-ups or yoga or just shake, 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 right? Or play golf or do yoga. It's because it's not just everyone's favorite language and it doesn't have to be. So I think both of those things are true. And for me, I always loved dance. I just love dancing. So it brings me great pleasure, even though sometimes it's like, oh, this feels too much, or I can feel my rolls, or I feel like, ugh. And certainly the minute we have someone else watching us do anything, the triggering is exacerbated
yes.
massively because now we're being seen and witnessed in our bodies, which is extra terrifying.
Exactly. And I really appreciate you said that about different ways to do it, that I'm not alone in not feeling not just comfortable with dancing, but maybe it's
Right.
not my catalyst, right? And so I've been suggesting to my coaching clients who feel similarly, and for myself, that within my exercise routines, be it like an interval workout, that I will still play, and maybe it's 30 seconds or a minute of a song that allows me to feel into my rage and then grief and then turn
Yeah.
on, as you suggest. But rather than dancing with it, I allow it to adjust the way I'm moving within. Like, am I jumping? Am I pounding? Am I lifting heavy? Am I stretching? Am I working on my core? And so that's how I've been able to work it into my life
Yeah.
in a comfortable, safe way. But
Yeah.
maybe dancing will come. I hope so. Every once in
Yeah.
a while, I wiggle it out.
Yeah. And maybe not. And then I'm like, well, what is dancing, man?
That's
Like,
true.
because, right, I'm moving my body rhythmically to music. And it's the same thing with singing, where people say, well, I can't sing or I can't dance. And I just don't ever believe that from anyone because it's in our DNA. You don't meet 3-year-old kids who are like, I can't dance and I can't carry a tune. We
Mm-hmm.
move, we sing, even if our rhythm isn't great, it's what we do as human beings. It's what we always have done since the time we were cavemen banging rocks together to make a rhythm, which is really how it started.
Yes. Yes. That's yes. My husband African drums. He doesn't dance. He doesn't
Yeah,
talk hardly. He doesn't share, but he plays African drums, and the rhythm of the drum. He feels like that's his connection to
that's
his
the thing.
soul, to his spirit, and to truth. And so, yeah, it's such a fun practice, though, to figure it out. And it seems like it's always through some sort of creativity,
Yeah,
right? Curiosity comes through the creativity,
yeah.
and then we just have to keep trying. I didn't a comedy. Are you kidding? That was not in my radar. Had I not had I not been feeling like, okay, it's I'm gonna disappear, or I'm gonna try something crazy.
Mm.
I'm gonna try the scariest thing I could think of. I wouldn't have gotten to that point and just seen if it stuck had I not tried everything. And like, I tried singing, I tried dancing, I'm
Right.
gonna try stand-up comedy. And but if we don't allow ourselves the space to do that, we'll just never know. So you might want to play mandolin
Right.
or river dance, or I don't know, like you might want to
Right.
do something you've never even considered. Uh,
Right.
I love that playing. I've been saying that finally learning to play with myself,
Yes.
not the way you suggested a rock star can't get. Mama Gina would be like, "Come on, woman." What the fuck is taking you so long? So when I was in Rockstar camp on the final day, everyone was claiming their like, what's the biggest, scariest thing they could do next? And I'd already said the book.
Mm.
And so I was like, what's scarier than writing a book about my sexuality? Oh, okay. One day I want to go into that sex toy shop in Portland.
Mhm.
Like, I didn't even say I wanted to do anything in it or with it, or any of the
Mhm.
toys. I
Mhm.
literally thought the scariest thing would be going to the store.
Mhm.
I have been to the store
Well, brag.
once, but only under duress. My friend Lisa said, we're going to have a meeting with some OBGYNs and some sexual therapists and sex counselors. We're going to talk about pelvic health. We're going to meet up in Nomia. So will you join us for the meeting? I'm like,
Oh, Lisa Parsons?
uh-huh, smart,
Yes.
right? I'm like, I could do a meeting. I could do a meeting. I could do and I went to the meeting. And then she's like, you just look around and I'll just look.
This says so much about you, posh audacious, as we like to call you. Because, and I think this is true for so many women, the logical part of our brain, which we're taught to listen to above all, would say things like, I can't write a book. I'm not ready to go to the sex toy shop. I definitely have no reason to get on stage and sing with a live band. And yet, there is another part of you. Where it lives, is it your heart, your spirit, your body, your pussy, your soul? I don't know. But there's some part of us that goes, yes, yes, even though my brain says no. Yes, even though this makes no sense. Yes, even though my brain is scared.
Mhm.
And you have just over and over responded to that yes with so much courage. And not everyone does that. And that is why you are where you are right now, with a program that's making a difference in people's lives, with a book that just got published, with um, all these practices that you're trying, you just keep doing, and who knows where it will take you next or take me next, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That
Excited.
intuitive, illogical, yes. Oh, that
Mhm.
sounds terrifying. Yes. Like,
Yes.
so brilliant.
Thank you. It's true.
So true. It's
I'm
so
trying to
true.
I'm trying to figure out what would scare me. Like, okay, what's next? And I usually start with what would sounds really scary and fun. What sounds really
Yeah.
scary and fun? And like it's almost gotten to the point where I'm like, TED Talk, like everybody does a TED Talk. And
Right.
then
Everybody has a TED Talk.
everyone does a TED Talk. I'm like,
Yeah.
one woman show. Sure, I could do it. And like I start playing around with these really grand, big ideas that felt inaccessible,
Yeah.
unattainable a year ago. And now it just feels like the world is wide open and it's just up to me to
Yeah.
step into it and say yes to it. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is fun. And so the paradox, of course, is I'm having the most fun I've ever had
Yeah.
and feeling as well as I've ever felt
Yeah.
at the same time going through no shit, the most difficult time in my life emotionally with Jamie being sick at the same time. And there's guilt that I work through. How could I possibly take this time to explore my sexuality? How could I
Right.
possibly
Right.
take this
Right.
time to explore my desire? And then of course, I realized that it's this energy that I have right now that I'm able to receive from all this pleasure and desire and fun that when I go back downstairs to
That's
care
right.
for him, I am able to make that boy laugh,
That's right.
dance, and I'm feeding him healthy foods and I'm not depleted. I'm not
That's right.
sitting with him all the time holding his pain because
That's
I
right.
can't, and that's okay. And that's been really hard for me to realize that I cannot sit with him with his pain 24/7 for 2 years. I can't.
Right.
I didn't have the energy to give back to myself, to him, to anything, anyone. And so um I'm sure there's a lot of women who are listening to this who are homeschooling and taking care of their aging adults and ill friends and in the middle of uncertainty and trauma and crises and wondering if it's appropriate or their
Right.
time or okay
Right.
to access their pleasure. And I just keep telling people, yes, more so now,
Yes. Even
especially,
more so,
especially.
especially because of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I am one of those women. I got a kid I have 3 kids doing remote learning. I have aging parents that live down the road. I have a business I'm trying to run, all those things. And the the conditioning would be, well, that I just need to serve more and give more, and because this is serious. I mean, this is serious. We're in a pandemic. This is a crisis. Like, we got to buckle down and really be with the pain. And we do that. And I know you do that too. But we have the capacity to do it because we are making our own joy, pleasure, fulfillment also a priority.
Mhm.
And when a woman's in her joy, fulfillment, and priority, making that a priority, everyone around her is taken higher.
Yes.
Period.
Yes. Yeah.
Not what we're taught.
No. And after today, I'm talking to a woman who's a sex therapist, and we're talking about how to teach pleasure to children, raising sexually healthy children, and how can we start giving them the messages of pleasure at a very early age. So I'm really fascinated about that. But I assume that that's one of the many, many ways to start
Yeah.
this conversation is with our children.
Yeah. And there
Mhm.
was something you said before too that just reminded me, like, how it's all always research, and it's all always like where you are is perfect, because as soon as any of us start doing the comparison thing, right, we're just totally fucked. And it
Yeah.
happens all the time. And we have a comparison shame at our fingertips all the time.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, and the models for that are so wild. So,
Hmm.
I mean, the primary models are like, we have Hollywood and porn.
Hmm.
Awesome. And then, or we have our friends in social media and other entrepreneurs and people who seem to be doing it better. And then we are never doing enough pleasure
Yeah.
or enough work.
Right.
But if I start where I am, and, maybe I don't feel capable of having 10 orgasms a day, but I could start by, stroking my face once a day. Oh, that feels good. That feels good. That feels good. And now I'm done.
Hmm. Hmm.
And just approving of where we are,
Hmm.
which is really, so it's the antidote to everything, I think, just approval of where we are. And it is so challenging from so many different angles.
Hmm. And it's lonely too if you
Yeah.
don't have the sisterhood and you don't have
Yeah.
support. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Right. If I'm in isolation, truly, me, myself, I would say it takes about 24 hours of alone time without leaning into sisterhood, where I will spiral very quickly.
Oh, yes. 24 hours. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I can't do this. Who am I to do this? This is too hard. This is too scary. This sucks.
Hmm.
I'm a loser. I don't know what I'm doing. Everyone else has it figured out. So that's why we have the tools and the practice and other women to reflect back to us.
Yes. And does anything like what would scare you? What could you
I
do?
know. I've been,
Yes.
well, I'm working on my third book, which is always very confronting. I mean, I'd love to hear more about your process of writing your book, but there's something about writing a book.
Pretty tangible.
Want to see what you're made of, and if you want to really be pushed up against um fear of, or like worthiness and self-doubt stuff, writing a book is it's pretty up there,
Yes.
because there's just so many layers, right? It's going to be it published in print forever.
Can't go back.
Can't go back. It's out there. I'm writing. Am I a good enough writer? And then, is my writing valuable? Is this going to teach anyone anything? Also, who do I think I am to be an author? Like, it's all been said before. So all the ego stuff gets stirred up. But I think I've thought about this a lot. The things, if I think, what could I do that would be really terrifying and fun?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because the first thing that comes to mind is like playing basketball. But that I don't think would be very fun.
Scary. Interesting. Okay.
unless I had like a really good coach. But like basketball, I never played basketball. I'm not good
Okay.
at basketball. So
Okay.
that scares me. Roller coasters and jumping out of airplanes terrifies me.
Okay.
It doesn't sound like fun.
No fun. Okay.
So, what would be fun and terrifying? I mean, it's such a yummy question to explore. And I feel like I'm doing every day fun and terrifying things. So when, someone like Matt, my partner goes, "Oh, you got to skydive. It's so fun." And I'm like, "You know what? I skydive every day
Yes.
mentally.
Yeah.
Like my life is a skydive." So on the weekends, the last thing I want to do is get into an actual plane and jump out.
You want to get grounded and stand next to a tree and
I
hug
want
it,
to stand next to a tree, curl
right?
up in a blanket, read a book, and be as safe as possible because my job
Oh,
feels like jumping out of an airplane every day.
yes, I feel that.
Don't
Yes.
you?
Yes.
I don't need a roller coaster. I've got one. It's called running a business.
Oh, true. Woo. Yes, because when that book came out this past weekend, I thought, okay, gear up. What's next? What's next? And I realized like, oh goodness gracious, like I'm in the middle. I'm like feeling like I'm jumping out of a plane. I feel like
Right.
I'm doing the scariest thing.
You
I
have.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Like I probably need to just stop for a second and integrate all of this.
Right.
Pause and then consider what's next. But yeah, life
Right.
and running a business and holding space
Yeah.
for all of the women that you hold space for in their terror and
That's
their
right.
pleasure.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I don't know about you, but that part feels easy. That part feels like a divine calling. I can
mhm.
sit and hold space, hold pain, hold big emotion. That I can carry. Give it to me. Give it to me. I got it. Um, but the piece about running a business, and this is one of the things that's kind of interesting as I'm playing with this whole no more playing small idea.
Mhm.
There's a way that it can sound like no more playing small means just keep going, keep pushing, do more, do more, do more. And there's no um, pause, like you said, to integrate what I've just done.
Mhm.
And that is like so not the case. And that's one of the things I'm always trying to teach, that it's like it's unnatural to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. It's unnatural to just always exhale and never inhale or vice versa, right?
Right.
It would be unnatural if it was just like winter all year round. So
Mhm.
I think that actually part of playing big is giving yourself permission to rest, to take breaks, to integrate. And for me, and I would guess probably for you, but for a lot of us, the taking a break part is really hard and scary too.
Harder.
Harder.
Yes. Yes. I celebrated by going to the float tank in Portland in the morning of my book because I wanted to just be quiet with my thoughts. That was not smart. Oh, I mean, well, it was a good idea and the worst idea I could ever possibly come up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's because we're so fucking trained to like
Yes.
that productivity is what's valuable.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
if I sit in the float tank, like, is this okay? Is it okay for me to rest? Is it okay for me to take a break? Um, yesterday, like I went into the woods with my daughter for the day. Like I just took the day off. It wasn't really part of my plan, which threw me for a loop. But it was like, okay, I've got this opportunity to be in the woods in the winter in Maine, which is my favorite thing.
Mm.
But it took me like probably an hour to like really
Mhm.
arrive. And
Mhm.
then it was like time to go. You know what I mean? It was
It's
like,
like the end of a massage, the last 5 minutes
yes,
are so divine.
yes. And It's so heartbreaking, isn't it? But it's so worth continuing the practice anyway, because I want to savor as much as I can of the
Mhm.
journey, right? It's like it's always going to be hard. Being depressed and sad and suicidal is hard.
Mhm. Mhm.
Running a business is hard, and being visible is hard. Writing a book is hard. There's always going to be hard. So we might as well pick the hard that's like fulfilling and
Yeah.
exciting and alive and makes a difference in other people's lives. And that's what you're doing. That's what turns me on anyway. When I'm like, it's going to be hard either way. So let's do the hard that makes us laugh. And
You could have given me a little heads up and warning on the fact that like writing stand-up comedy and performing stand-up comedy might be just pushing it a little bit too much because Megan Joe, that is consistently a year and a half later, still
yeah.
scary and hard.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that would be scary and hard for me. Before the pandemic, you had asked me to be like your keynote speaker, and I was like, but I don't know how, I don't know what, I don't know what. And I'm actually a great fan of comedy and not quite a student of comedy, but like I spend a lot of time watching stand-up comedy and assessing comedy shows and what are the bits and what are the techniques, and I still find that so exciting and terrifying. And I know that's what turns people on about it. Um, and the fact that you're using that path to transform the things that give us heartache, grief, and shame. I mean, it's so fucking genius. But I didn't know you came up with that idea in the green room
Yeah.
um
Yes.
that night.
That
And
night.
and I think that from what you're telling me, it sounds very much like a calling because it makes no sense
No, it did
logically.
not. No, it did not. I was bawling, curled up in fetal position on that very dusty couch in the dark with the little window
Oh
where
yeah,
I was like looking out, watching everybody dance. Why can't I dance? I should do stand-up comedy. What the hell is that?
right. And there's an opening, right? In the crack. There's like an opening. It's like, oh, I could do a version of this. What would it be? I think it's going to be comedy. And you are incredibly funny.
Thank you.
You and I know you've been studying and like working with other comedians, but you have like a natural comedic talent. And you know it, or else you wouldn't be studying it and loving it so much.
I am loving it. It's very releasing. It really gives you the opportunity to say anything and it
Right.
just lands so easily on other people's ears. So I can make a joke now about sexual shame or
That's
religious
right.
trauma and people are laughing. It's so releasing to
That's
release
right.
those secrets in that format.
Big time. And I
Mm,
think some of the greatest activists of our time and previous to our time have been comedians.
mm.
Because if it's in the realm of comedy, there's more freedom and there's laughter. And when laughter is happening, learning is happening. Whenever I'm teaching, I know learning is happening if people are laughing, and aliveness and presence.
There's a
And
tagline. There's no aha without a ha ha.
yes.
I use that often when I do my lead with laughter workshops. I just start with that because you can remember it. There's no
That's right.
aha without a ha-ha.
Without a ha-ha.
Mhm.
That's right. And all the chemistry that goes, and I'll be receptive to hearing things that I otherwise might be offended by, shut down to, that's why I mean, Dave Chappelle, I think, is one of the great activists and
Mhm.
teachers because
Mhm.
he says things that if you put those, on a news station or in any other context, and he still gets a ton of shit for doing it in comedy. So does Ricky Gervais. So does every comedian that pushes the boundaries. Like
Absolutely.
you get fucking hate mail and
I
people
did get hate.
who are you to do this? It's just but there's a kind of freedom, right? And a way that you can push the envelope a little as long as they're laughing.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you get it.
I totally get it. And I also love that we could go on and on about
I
comedy
know.
stuff and I'm
I
so
know.
curious to hear more, but there's a way that like this is true for Rockstar Camp too, right? Like we can control the bits and the script and the lighting and the story, but we cannot control the audience.
Mhm.
And the
Mhm.
audience is going to give you very real feedback.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And some people might do a fake laugh or a fake applause, but you can tell when it's real. It's honest feedback. You're either funny or you're not. It was funny or it wasn't to that particular audience. It was inspiring or it wasn't. The song went well or it wasn't. And I think with both of our work, you don't have to be an extraordinary talent as a comedian or a singer. In fact, what's so inspiring is watching someone who's not an incredible talent who's
Yes.
doing it anyway.
Yes, that's liberating. Yes. That's so true with the comedians too. When we do our show at the end of the 8 weeks, Roar with Laughter, we put on a show and nobody has any comedy experience coming into it. And it's the folks that maybe didn't prepare a whole lot, weren't really
That's
sure
right.
what they were going to say. It's really messy. Now it's like bloopers and it's completely
Right.
relatable and their truth comes out and it's not polished, but it's so real. And then somebody in the audience does, of course, because it's virtual and we don't have actual like live claps and laughter
Right.
yet, but it will be on stage. People are doing this and thumbs up,
Yeah.
and you can
Yeah.
see it in their faces that they can relate, and that's something made them feel like oh, I belong, I hear you, I see you, I know you. That's awesome. Yeah,
That's it.
so
And
good.
I think part of that is I can relate and I'm excited. It's like it opens up a possibility. And I know this has happened for a lot of your, students, participants who've watched the show and then said, oh, if they can do it, I can do it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's what happened in Rockstar Camp all the time. And the performances that were most moving were the ones with the most bloopers, right?
Interesting.
With the
Yes.
most mistakes. It's just a different
Mhm.
context because we're not just doing it for entertainment, we're doing it for growth, we're doing it for learning, we're doing it for personal growth.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels far more transformative than entertaining. Both
Right.
both of our venues. Yes. So what do you do? Okay. Because you'd be a fool not to want to work with this woman. So I say this almost at the end of every podcast. I could talk to you for hours, but seriously,
Oh,
I
it's
want to
really
talk to you for hours.
true. It's true.
Uh,
It's true. We can
uh,
do a part two. We'll do a
yay.
celebration. That's
Yay.
six
Thank
months
thank you.
celebrating your bestseller status or something.
We could do stand-up comedy and play basketball
Yes. You jump out of an airplane.
while we're jumping out of an airplane. And
Oh
I
my
could have a
God.
vibrator and use it.
Yes. So skydive, you've got a vibrator, I've got a basketball, and we both jump out, and then you're self-pleasuring, and then I'm aiming for the basketball hoop, and then we land and say a punchline.
Woo! Show over. Thank you for coming to our TED Talk. That's it.
Talk. That's our TED Talk. We got it.
Oh my goodness.
So,
So,
I
start
think
camp.
I was gonna
Go big and small. All your master classes. Read your damn book. Just
read my book. I will say this for anyone who's listening, because since the pandemic came, Rockstar Camp, the live experience has very much been on hold, and I so admire what you've done in transitioning stuff to online, which I experimented with a little bit and really struggled without without the band, because
Mhm.
as you know, the band and the music itself it's literally like a partner in the process,
Mhm.
the vibration of it. And so what I've been doing since then is just translating the same tools and principles, um, and giving people almost like parallel experiences. Maybe you're not singing on stage, but can you go on Facebook Live 7 days in a row?
Mhm.
Maybe you're not singing on stage, but can you be interviewed this week? And so I'm still working with women of all flavors. And mostly, women like you who are just smart, coachy, giver, light worker, spirit led, healer types, and helping them do what you're doing. Can I get clear on who I want to help and how could I help them in a way that would be fun
Mhm,
and impactful
mhm.
and lucrative? And then how do I put myself out there, which you have been doing so fucking beautifully. Every post I see, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. It's so inspiring. But as you know, for a lot of women, that taking those first steps is like really daunting.
It really feels like you're jumping into a fire.
Mhm. It feels like you're jumping into a fire. And then we have the sisterhood, just like when you got off stage, you had, 10 women to hold you and catch you and cheer you on and support you. It's the same idea, but we're just doing it virtually. So, oh my God, I just did my interview. I was just on Pasha's podcast. Oh my God. And they've got a sisterhood that's there to help them approve of themselves. And really, all we're doing really on a deep level, and you're doing the same thing, is rewiring a person's visceral embodied experience of being seen and heard, because it feels like you're going to die
Mhm,
to
mhm.
the brain actually is saying this is a very bad idea. You're not going to go do comedy with an audience. That is a horrible idea. You've never done it before. It's very risky. And so I'm going to send messages to you. And besides, being seen and heard is a very bad idea. So don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yes.
But we encourage people to do it and then they don't die.
No. And so valuable for somebody like me who doesn't have the family
Yeah.
system of support that I would dream of and feel envy towards when I see other people have that. And the sisterhood that you create is the sisterhood that I continuously return to so that they can continue to mirror my brilliance and
Right.
honor my path and celebrate. So I just can't imagine what I would have done, because these are the radical, fun women who have held my hand throughout it all and have seen the whole process. So how fun it is to go through your program and say, you want us to what? You want us to call a whatever it is, radio station or news station, and then be like, huh, okay, well, after I do, first of all, what's the worst that could happen is the
Right.
question I keep asking myself, like, what am I really scared of? But then to
Right.
be able to come back and say I did it and know with 100% certainty that somebody in that community is going to, within seconds, read that and celebrate you. That's
Yes.
comforting. But you need a big sisterhood to do that, and you've created it. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's life-saving. I say
Well, I
that
love
a lot.
that you're saying that because so many of us don't have that community naturally. And in fact, we may have parents, siblings, kids who think we're crazy, lost our minds, complete, laugh in our face. What are you doing? And that's a big deal.
Mhm, mhm.
It's a big deal. So it's the community piece is so key, right? And I know someone's going to celebrate me. Someone's going to get it. Someone's going to cheer me on. Someone's going to have my back. And that's where it's at. It's
Mhm.
just too hard I couldn't do it alone. Maybe some people can.
Mm, certainly not as fun.
Not
Certainly. How can people reach you? Where do they go?
I think the best place is probably I'm in Facebook a lot, as you know,
Mhm.
and it's just Megan Jo Wilson on Facebook. And I do have a really cool one of the communities I think you're talking about, Posh, is my Facebook group, which has a very long name called Megan Jo Wilson's Rockstars in the Army of Light.
Is that the name?
It's a long story. Why
I
why
just
I have
write
that.
army. I write
Very
army and search takes me there. That's what.
search Army, Megan Jo Wilson Army.
Mhm.
But that's a pretty specific community, and I do a lot of teaching in there, but it's mostly women, mostly coaches, mostly people in the early stages of their business and really navigating all the challenges of doing that. And that's my mission. That's my total mission, is to help women like you, like me, like the other women we hang with, to go share their gifts and make money doing it and help other people to heal. That's my contribution. Like, it's not basketball, so
And how wonderful it is, I'm sure, for you to be able to. I'm not the only one. I'm sure that hundreds of people will say this, but I'm thinking that it's tangible for you. Like you could like my ex-husband used to make rock walls, and I was so envious because he saw the wall he made. I'm like,
right,
what's the thing that I made? So that's why I love the idea of a book and a podcast. It's like,
right,
look, here, I did it. I did
right,
it.
right,
Selling
right.
here. But I have to say, like, I'm your rock wall, because a year
Yeah,
and a half ago, I did not dance, sing, laugh, play, pleasure. Um, and, and it was not there. It was so hidden. And I'm grateful forever to you for holding that space so patiently and gently, and allowing me. And again, this is just working with you. This is what it looks like, but coming to the calls, not with the video on, but crying under my table, sobbing, not realizing I wasn't muted, then finding out I wasn't muted, and that everyone heard me sobbing while you continued on with your masterclass, and then realizing that it was okay, that people
yeah,
were holding space for my sobs.
yeah.
Wow. And then the world opens up, and you feel safe being finally free and authentic. And yeah, I'm just going to keep gushing until you hang up. Oh, wait, but if people want to reach me, if you'd like to have a conversation with me, because I'm a fucking coach too.
Because I'm a coach too.
And
Yes.
it's a really good one. PashaMarlowe.com is my website, and email is pasha@pashamarlowe.com. You can find me by my name, Pasha Marlowe, on Facebook and Instagram and all the places. And I love my work. I love coaching. It is the most fun I've ever had. And I love
Yeah.
watching the transformation. And I love being able to circle back and reconnect to the women who inspired me and showed me the way, namely Megan Jo Wilson. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sister. You are my rock wall. I love that. And I tell your story all the time.
I
I
appreciate it.
love what you're doing. I'm so grateful for what you're doing. I love participating in what you're doing.
You're going to
And
get on that stand-up comedy stage as soon as we find a venue and it's safe to do so.
I gotta do it. I gotta take the class. I gotta practice my bits. I'm so proud of your book. Like I
Thank
said, I just bought it. And of course, we'll be talking about that far and wide. So we can be each other's rock walls.
Awesome. I love that. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening, for watching, and I will see you soon. Pasha Marlowe, let pleasure be the measure. Thank you, Megan Jo Wilson.
My pleasure.